And welcome to another edition of South Texas Crossfire. This is Attorney Joe Flores reminding you to join us each and every week right here on KTMV with the Lopez family. Special thanks to Don Humberto Lozano Lopez. He passed away in 2011, but he's honored, he's venerated, he's never forgotten. And my good friend Carlos Lopez. You guessed it, the Ted Turner of South Texas Broadcasting. Well, as always, I like to document history in South Texas and bring on people that matter, and everybody matters. But near and dear to my heart are the court system, judges that preside over cases. And we have a double doozy today. We're going to have somebody who's running for judge, but also prosecuted one of the most historical trials, not only in South Texas, but throughout the world. And that is, you'll be hearing from Carlos Valdez, who was our district attorney for many, many years, and my dear friend Mark Skirka. And we're going to hear about Miss Sterling. We're going to hear about the whole story when we get started here. But I'd like to welcome Carlos Valdez. Welcome, sir.
Oh, thank you, Joe. Mr. Flores, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. I really appreciate this. And I want to thank the Lopez family, and Carlos Lopez especially. They do so much for our community, and not just here in Corpus Christi. I'm talking about the whole community of South Texas and maybe even the entire state of Texas. They bring to the forefront stories, voices, things that people need to hear that have never been heard before. This is very, very important, so I appreciate what they do for us. I appreciate what they do for the whole community, and I appreciate this opportunity. And thank you for the invitation.
No, my pleasure. We've had on your good friend, Judge Vargas. He does such great work with the community. Remember, get a will, do some estate planning, do all that. He's behind that push for that. Not that we want anybody to pass away, but estate planning matters. And those legal matters that we bring out, that's why I brought you out also, because we're getting not only to hear about your campaign, but I want to talk about your education, your training, your background, and then we'll get to which I think many of our viewers want to hear about firsthand, about one of the greatest but yet most tragic trials that ever happened in Texas history, in the United States. People all over the world mourned and came, and I'd like to hear it firsthand, your experience. But let's talk about where you grew up and your training and your background.
Well, I was born and raised here in Corpus Christi. A lot of people don't know that. I've lived here all my life. I was born in Molina, the Barrio Molina. When I was born many years ago, it was probably the poorest part of Corpus Christi, although many people didn't consider it part of the Corpus Christi because we didn't have indoor plumbing provided by the city until I was in the 6th grade. So I grew up with going to an outhouse for the first several years of my life. I grew up in an extremely poor family. We had very, very limited resources. My parents had been married before to other people and had one of the first melded families.
Like the Brady Bunch, but in Molina.
That's exactly right. I always call myself part of the Mexican Brady Bunch.
There you go.
There was 14 of us altogether. I have 13 brothers and sisters.
Oh my goodness.
That we all grew up together, and my dad, when he was making the most money, was making like $18,000 a year. He was a laborer with no formal education at all. My mom went to the 3rd grade before she dropped out to help her family. So we didn't have the resources that other people perhaps had, but we were very happy growing up. Everybody in Molina was in the same boat. So we didn't know it was any different until we started watching TV, and I started going to the library and things and reading about certain things. I figured out that the way out of our circumstances was through education, through reading, through going to the library, through school. So I figured at an early age that what I needed to do, what I wanted to do, was to become a lawyer. For this reason, Joe, because I saw how a lawyer very early, when I was in the 4th grade, I saw how a lawyer was able to help my mom, who was afraid that they were going to take away our house, that we were going to lose our house because my dad couldn't afford like the $20 monthly payment. And they went to talk to a lawyer, and the lawyer was able to relieve them of any problems that they have, relieve them of any worries that they had. And I said, that's what I want to do with my life. I never thought about I can make a lot of money, I can make myself a millionaire. I always thought I can help people by being a lawyer. I can help people. I can help people like my mom. I can stop my mom from crying. If she ever has any single problem, any problem, all she's got to do is talk to her son, and her son will take care of it. So from very early on, I decided what I want to do is to become a lawyer. So I started working at it. Well, going to school, listening to my teachers, doing a lot of things that somehow I found difficult to do when I was growing up because I'm very cabezón, very hard-headed. So I found it difficult, but I said I'm going to do it. I am blessed, and I understand this, and I know you understand this. We are blessed to live in this country. In this country,
That's right.
all you have to do is want to do it. If you want to do it and it's a good thing and it's the right thing, people will help you. There are resources in this country. So we are very, very blessed by God to have been born in this country. I realized that back then, I realize it now. I really think that if I had been born somewhere else, I would not have been able to accomplish the things that I've accomplished. So I set out looking for opportunities. I worked. I struggled. I applied for scholarships. I applied for loans. I applied for grants. I applied for everything. And eventually, after several years of struggle, I became a lawyer. Let me tell you, my mom and dad had no idea how I did it. Before they died, if you asked them, how did Carlos do this? They would say, I have no idea. I have no idea because the only thing they gave me when I left home to go to school, the only thing was my mom said, God bless you, son. That's it. No car, no money, there wasn't anything. So they had no idea how I did it. I know how I did it. By having been born in this country and having a lot of people, a lot of good people who believed in what I was doing and what I wanted to do, helping me. And it's been like that from the very start, and it still continues to this day. There's people who are listening to us right now, who are listening to this program and saying, I want to help this man. That's the way it's been, that's the way it still is. So I appreciate all this, and that's the only way I could have done what I did.
And I like to see things as colorblind, and we all do. It doesn't matter what color you are in this country. Like you said, there are opportunities, but certainly there were some obstacles, things that I didn't have to encounter that you did. That you were one of the very first, in the 70s, 80s, lawyers coming up that were young lawyers.
Yes.
And also lawyers that wanted to participate in the justice system. Yes. So tell me a bit about those barriers. I mean, we focus on the positive, but we also have to remember people like you that have to come through barriers and obstacles in order to serve like you wanted to serve and help your mother and help the community. Tell us a little bit about some of those obstacles.
That's very, very important, Joe. Because if you want to do something good, there are always going to be people, always, who say you can't do it.
Naysayers.
They're going to tell you you can't do it, and they give you reasons for it. They give you good reasons for it. The good reasons, they tell you, look, you're poor. You're poor. You have no money. To go to school, you need a lot of money, so you can't do it. They'll tell you, look, you're Hispanic. Back then, how many Hispanic lawyers do you see on TV? How many? And we would look at Perry Mason and say, well, I don't see any on Perry Mason, so how can you be a lawyer? You're Hispanic. You're not very good looking, they would tell me. You're not very good looking. Lawyers have to be handsome to get up in court and argue.
Boy, I'd be in trouble. I'd be in trouble.
That's right. So people give you reasons and tell you, and if you allow them they can mess with your mind, and you can and a lot of people allow that to happen. They'll stop whatever they want to do because they believe other people telling them. But I figured out there's only one person who can stop me from becoming a lawyer, and that's me. Nobody else can. Nobody. If I believe I can do it, I'm going to do it. But if somebody convinces me and I believe I can't, then I won't do it. So along the way, what I wanted to do when I started was I wanted to open doors that had been closed to a certain part of our community. When I was growing up in Molina, you didn't go to the courthouse. The only reason you went to the courthouse, anybody in Molina, was because you were in trouble. If you went to the courthouse, you had some problem, some serious problem. In fact, the only reason you'd go to the courthouse most of the time is because police took you there. So you didn't go to the courthouse. The doors at the courthouse were all closed. You don't go in there. What I wanted to do when I started in politics was to open some of those doors and make sure those doors are open and people understand this belongs to everybody, not just to a certain part of the community. It belongs to all of us. We all pay taxes. These doors are open to everybody. So that's what I wanted to do. Now, of course, the naysayers all said, when I started in politics, I was 28 years old. 28 when I started running. And people said, you're too young. You don't know what's going on. You don't have any money for politics. You don't have any experience. You've never run for office before. And once again, the same thing. I thought, well, I'll just put my name out there. People believe in me. They'll vote for me. And there was 3 other people who ran in that first campaign in 1984. And I was in a runoff with Herbert Hawkins, who had been on the city council for some time and had been elected to office. And I was lucky enough to be elected based on one principle that I really believed. They can outspend me. They can have more experience. They can do it. The only thing they will not do is outwork me. If you want to get something done, you can't wait for it to come to you. You have to go out and work for it and work for it and work for it.
Yes, sir.
So if my opponent is at a place at 9 o'clock in the morning, I'm going to be there at 7 in the morning. If he stays there until 9 o'clock at night, I'm going to stay there until 12 midnight. I'm going to just outwork people. Now, that worked fine when I was a little younger. As you get older, you get a little more tired. So, but still, you work a little smarter now instead of just spending all the time that's necessary to get things done. But that's been my way of doing things. And when I've taken an office, the way I look at it is, I'm not interested in being called the district attorney, in being in the position, in having all this, well, you're the district attorney. In fact, when I was the DA or the county attorney, I never introduced myself. I'm your district attorney. I would always introduce myself, and still do. I'm a prosecutor in the district attorney's office. And people would laugh and say, you're the district attorney, say that. When you start saying things like that, you start getting into your brain that this belongs to you, that this office belongs to you. It never belongs to you. It never belongs. It belongs to the people, and they give you an opportunity to serve them in this position. To serve them, not to reign over them, not to rule over them, but to serve them in this position. And from the very start, I knew that this is the way you need to approach things. And you should not allow things to get into your head where you think you're better than everybody. You think position belongs to you and you shouldn't have to run for it. No. This position, the county attorney's position, the district attorney's position, the city attorney's position, these positions that I've held, they belong to the people. The only reason I'm allowed to occupy those positions is because the people allow me to. And when they say no, then it's no.
Well, and you bring up a very, very good point. When you started out your position as county attorney, what were some of the things that you wanted to change? What were the? And we're going to take a break here in a couple of minutes, but I want to focus in on the second half on the district attorney and your race for judge. But the county attorney position. This was your first position.
Right.
You're 29.
I was 29 years old, right, when I was
Okay,
elected.
and so it's not just you, but then there's also the old establishment, the old guard. Some people whose names are on airports. They would say, "This guy's going to run. This guy's going to run," and so you have that old guard, that establishment that you have to work with,
Oh, yes.
along
Yes.
with the people. And that won't change. The politics, there's a machine in there. But then when you get someone like yourself in there, a newcomer, right? And those people try to capitalize on that. And so when you get in there as county attorney, let me ask you, you were young, perhaps impressionable, but what kept you on your course? I'm sure a lot of people, once they said you made it in there, the greatest two lies in the world are the checks in the mail and "I voted for
Yeah.
you." Right.
That's right,
Everybody
that's right.
was with you. Yeah.
You know, if everybody who says they voted for me had voted for me, I'd never lose an election. I don't know.
Right.
But what has happened is I've had a lot of people, naysayers, still after I've been elected, and most of the time, what's important is talking, communication. Sometimes we get to a point where we're talking at each other instead of with each other, and I find that most problems can be resolved. Most of them nowadays is very much more difficult because of the way things are in the country. But most problems can be resolved if you bring people together and sit and talk with each other instead of at each other, and there's always reasonable ground for people to be able to resolve things. There's always. Now, if you say black and I say white, there's always gray where you're not going to be happy, I'm not going to be completely happy, but we can live with it. We need to find that gray area that people can live with. It's not going to be, and I realize in the positions I've held, I'm not going to make everybody happy. It's impossible.
It's impossible.
It's impossible to make everybody happy. So many times, both sides of an issue have been angry with me. Both of them, because I've decided certain things that need to be decided. So both of them are angry with me. And I figure that I'm doing my job right. If one side is always happy and one side is always angry, I must be doing something wrong.
Right.
And I'll tell you, Joe, my experience has been that most of the people, because there's people in the community to this day who are angry with me, who don't like me. Most of them are angry with me or don't like me because I've done my job right, and I've done it competently, and I've done it to the best of my ability. And when that happens, it makes certain people very angry. And most people an example, just a brief example. I had a lady come up to me, an older lady, and say, "Mr. Valdez, I'm never going to vote for you again." I said, may I ask why? She said, "Because you closed down all the maquinitas, all the 8-liners. I said, "Well, yeah, that's my job. I'm a prosecutor, and that's the law of the state of Texas. If they're gambling devices, I have to close them down. But then we have nothing to do." And I said, "Well, that can be fixed very easily. You can get your legislators to change the law in Austin, and then I won't close them down if they change the law. But you should be angry at somebody else, not at me."
Because and the same
Because I'm
thing
doing
for
my
a
job.
judge. The same thing
It's
for a
the same thing
judge.
for a judge.
When we've argued many times, lawyers walk out because they say, things the judge ruled unfairly. Actually, the judge went by the law.
That's exactly right.
And I've had many a judge tell me, as I made an argument for sentencing guidelines and saying there are more Hispanics and blacks. There's 95% of white prosecutors in this country.
Right. That's a good point.
And they just you know, a lot of them have said, well, that's what your senator and your congressman and your representatives are for. But it is true that you paved the way. A lot of people paved the way for people like me to go to law school. And it was hard enough for me. I can imagine how it was for you.
It was very at first, it was very, very difficult. And even now, you still face some of that, but not as much as in the beginning.
Yeah.
But even now, you still face some of that.
It's just gone underground, you know. Well, not so underground in the last year or two, but it's come
now
back,
it's
right?
more popular. But no, I'm talking also about you have no idea how many times I've heard people tell me that's never been done before. We can't do it. It's never been done before. And my response is always the same. Look, it's already been decided. I've already decided it can be done. It will be done. The only thing I'm asking you to do it is find a way to do it, because it can be done.
Can be done.
And it can be done. But we've never done it like that. I know. And because I've never been county attorney before. I've never been district attorney before. I've never been city attorney before. So now we're going to do it. And we're not only going to do it, we're going to do it successfully, we're going to do it right, and we're going to do it to the best of our ability. And it's going to get done. You have no idea how many times I've had subordinates, people in the office who come and say, we've never done that before. It's never been done. Well, we got to start somewhere.
That's right. Well, we're going to take a brief break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking about this book here and this story that must be told again and again, so people don't forget that why we have prosecutors and why we have the justice system, and how people that murder or take away someone's life, that justice must be served. Not only for that, but even for a parking ticket, justice must be served. And here, watching Carlos Valdez, he's asking for your vote. He's running for the 148th District Court, and I'm proud to have him on. We're making history right now, so stay tuned when we come back. And we're back after a brief break. You're watching South Texas Crossfire KTMV, Channel 6 on Spectrum. And very excited to have on the author and also district attorney, county attorney, city attorney, and he's also running for district judge, Carlos Valdez. And we're making history talking about this case that affected so many lives in Corpus Christi, the state, the nation, and the world. The Selena case, and all of us know her, and her beautiful statue, Mirador de la Flor, is right across from my office building. I see it every day. But I have the prosecutor who helped convict the murderer of Selena and that tragedy that's happened over 20 years ago. And I want to welcome you back, Carlos Valdez.
Thank you, Joe. It's good to be here.
I'm glad you brought your book with us, Justice for Selena, the State versus Yolanda Saldivar. And I also remember that the case wasn't tried here. It was tried in Harris County.
There was a motion to transfer venue filed by the defense attorney, alleging that Selena had so many fans in Corpus Christi that we couldn't find an impartial jury. We couldn't seat an impartial jury because of all the fans that she had in Corpus Christi. We argued against it, and it was a day-long hearing with witnesses on each side. And in the end, Judge Westergren agreed with the defense and said she's got so many fans in Corpus Christi that there's no way we could select 12 impartial people to form the jury. So he decided to move the case. He moved it to Houston.
And let me stop you there. She had just performed, I think, in the livestock rodeo show, and she had done such a great job, and people had seen her, and really worldwide recognition was just. So why Houston?
I don't know, and I've never talked to the judge
Of course.
to find out why he selected Houston. It was an interesting choice because in Houston she had sold out the Astrodome at the Houston Livestock Show maybe a month before she was killed. She had sold out the Astrodome. So if she had a bunch of fans in Corpus Christi, she had many more fans in Houston. So at first I was very troubled, disappointed, angry by the fact that we were going to Houston. I wanted to try the case here in Corpus Christi. I really believed that the people of Corpus Christi could be fair and impartial and listen to the evidence and render a verdict based on the evidence. So I was angry that we were going to Houston. But then when I started finding out about the demographics of Houston and things like that, I said it may not be that bad. And then when I talked to the people at the district attorney's office in Houston, they said, all you need to do is get a verdict of guilty. If you get a conviction, don't worry, they will take care of her as far as punishment is concerned. So we went to Houston. Once we got to Houston, Joe, I was kind of glad that we had gone to Houston because Houston had seen trials of this magnitude before. They were used to it. They had made so many preparations that I had never even thought about in Corpus Christi.
Such as?
They had a whole floor, the fifth floor of the courthouse, set aside for the trial. The only way to get to the fifth floor was through the elevator. Nobody could get off the elevator without we had a badge that everybody wore. Everybody. Anybody who didn't have the badge could not get off the elevator on the fifth floor. And this included the trial participants, the people in the audience. They had like a 200-seat courtroom, and about 150 seats were set aside for media. And then the rest of them, like 50 to 100 seats a day, were raffled off outside the courthouse. First 50 people whose name or number was called, they received a pass to go to the trial. Every single day they would do this. So without that, you couldn't get off, which made the whole proceeding, made it a whole lot easier to be able to try to get to accomplish justice, which is what we were looking for. So anybody who was on the floor had to have this identification, and if you didn't, they'd take you out. Every day they would have the SWAT team in the morning and the bomb squad check the courtroom in the morning before we started, check the courtroom in the evening after we left to make sure there were no weapons, there were no bombs, there were nothing. So there was a lot of security that I hadn't even thought about. Outside the courthouse, surrounding the courthouse in Houston, I hadn't even thought about. There was thousands of people every day. I mean, surrounding the courthouse, you see pictures, there's thousands of people. You need some kind of security. They had mounted patrols, they had police at very specific areas to control people. They had an area set aside where the lawyers and any other participants could drive into a protected parking space where we could go and get out of our cars and be able to, and then come back in and leave. All these things I had never even thought about, and I don't think Corpus Christi had thought about.
And Harris County Courthouse isn't that big. I used to work at Abraham and Watkins, and I'd go down there, and we used to have to go and manually file things back in the day when dinosaurs roamed the earth, and there was no wind in Houston. You have the buildings, so it's 98 degrees, and you're in a suit, and you're clerking for these big shot lawyers. Abraham and Watkins, great people. But I remember the Harris County Courthouse is not that big, and when parking is crazy. They have it is just insane. You have the criminal side, and then you have the civil side, and then you have the family law. But it used to be a lot of it used to be all together.
They had one parking lot that was set off protected. That was for us, and we'd have to use a card to get in. They'd have protection so that we could go and because if they didn't have that, it would be impossible for us to get to the courtroom. Well, just trying to walk through a crowd was impossible. You couldn't get to it.
I mean, just to get started for you, let's Douglas Tinker, okay. He was no slacker when it came to the law. He was, and I had the honor to meet him in the autumn and the winter of his career when I first came out of law school almost 2 decades ago, and I saw him in action. but I mean, he was appointed
Yes,
to the
he
case.
was.
I mean, he did not get payment from the assailant.
No, he was paid by the state of Texas as an appointed lawyer. An interesting thing is that Doug, at this point in his career, did not take any appointments. He was so well known that people would come to him and hire him and pay him a good fee to represent him because he was one recognized as one of the best lawyers in Texas, one of the best criminal lawyers in Texas.
Well, he was with the David Koresh case with with the Branch Davidians and everything in
If
Waco.
I'm not mistaken, the year before the Salina case, or maybe that same year, he was named as the best criminal defense attorney in the state of Texas. That's how well known he was. He didn't have to take appointments. He took this appointment as favored to Judge Westergren. What had happened, Joe, was when the case first started, there was another lawyer, another criminal defense lawyer, real good criminal defense lawyer here in Corpus Christi, who was appointed. He lasted a weekend and came back on Monday morning to our office saying that he was going to ask the judge to get off the case, to be allowed to get off the case, because his two daughters were in school and had heard all this talk about this mean lady who had shot Selena, and they were talking about the lawyer who was what lawyer was going to represent her. And so he was afraid of what might happen to his daughters, so he wanted off the case. And
Very legitimate concern.
Of course, with a case like this, there's so many different people that come out of the woodwork that you're not prepared for. We had people calling our office threatening things, saying that they had information, saying that they had evidence.
Why would they be threatening you?
Some serious threats that I received from a prison gang.
Really?
From a prison gang saying that they were going to kill Carlos Valdez, the prosecutor, for bringing this case against Yolanda Saldivar, that everybody knew that Yolanda Saldivar was innocent, that there was an accidental shooting, and that this was the reason I was doing this. And this was a common theme throughout. The media was always asking, what is it that you're running for? The only reason I was prosecuting this case personally was because I wanted to be governor of the state of Texas, and this would propel me into a campaign for governor. And I kept telling people, look, I'm doing this because it's my job.
People thought you were going to run for governor. And take
Yes.
this.
And people were interested in two things
Oh,
when
wow.
I mean, the media would ask about who was my tailor, who dressed me. They called me the Dapper DA, and they wanted to know, where do you buy your clothes? Who makes your clothes for you? That was what's interesting. And what else are you going to run for? Is it true you're running for governor? Is it true that you're looking at something else? Because everybody can see that you're very ambitious. And I kept telling them, look, first of all, I buy my clothes at JCPenney, like most people that I know. And secondly, I want to be district attorney. I'm doing this case because it's the right thing to do, because it's my job. This is my job. If I was watching, it's the same year as O.J. Simpson, 1995. And I was watching what's going on in Los Angeles, where the district attorney, Gil Garcetti,
I remember.
was just there as a spokesperson. And I said, I don't want to do that. If we lose this case, remember what happened in O.J. Simpson? Not guilty. If we lose this case, I'm going to lose it.
They're going to blame it on Marcia Clark. They were going to blame it on Mr. Skirka.
Yes, and I don't want that, because my name is at the top. And if we lose this case, I'm going to lose it. And I'm going to go out there and tell people, look, I'm sorry. I made mistakes, and I'm sorry for the result. So it's going to be my fault. Joe, what had happened was there's so much anger in the community, and you could see it every single day. That anger was directed at Yolanda Saldivar.
Yes, sir.
And I knew, I figured out that if it's not guilty, if she walks out of that courtroom a free woman, all that anger would not be directed at her anymore. It would be directed at one single person, at me, because it would be my fault.
No pressure.
So I figured this out, and I had worked out a little plan to get away. In case it's not guilty, what I'm going to do is I'm going to send the staff out. Everybody's going to leave while I go down to talk to the media, and then I'm going to have one of the investigators who was with us stand behind me, and as soon as I finish talking to the media, have him ready to whisk me away and have a car ready, because I was very, very serious about what might happen to it. This was a serious situation. But in the end, everything worked out. There was a conviction and life sentence, so everything worked out.
When we talk about the trial, and I think that you've kind of set the stage for what the trial was like, and really this was at the, like you said, it was the O.J. Simpson trial, where trials became more a media circus.
That's exactly right.
That was when it really had that paradigm shift, where you had trials that were, you'd see people sketched very nicely, paintings, of people and drawings in courtrooms, but now you were seeing them as it unfolded. After the Gulf War, and then you had trials, and then things, and Rodney King and everything. So you have now things are unfolding on video. In
O.J.
real
Simpson
time.
set that in place. With the O.J. Simpson, with every day they had the trial on TV, every day that was televised. The O.J. Simpson case ended the week before we started trying the case in Houston. I don't know if you knew this, but on Wednesday, in early October, on Wednesday, the verdict in O.J. Simpson came in. The following Monday morning, we start picking a jury in Houston. All the media that was in Houston just packed up and went to, that was in L.A., packed up and went to Houston. So, and I saw this happening in Los Angeles in O.J. Simpson. It's a new way of trying cases.
It was like Court TV had just sprung up out of nowhere.
And people liked it, and people were commercializing what we do in the courtroom. It sells soap. And people figured that out, that it's good for making money. In our case, in the Selena murder trial, they filed a motion to televise the proceeding. 2 networks, Court TV and Univision, filed a motion, and we had almost a day-long hearing on the motion to televise. And we had some very, very able lawyers came in to argue and asked Judge Westergren to allow cameras in the courtroom to be televising the trial. We were against it. I was against it. Doug Tinker was against it also. I don't want to have to be performing in front of the camera. I just want to be able to concentrate on my trial, concentrate on what's going on without having somebody watching over my shoulder the whole time. So we argued against it, and in the end, Judge Westergren ruled against the cameras in the courtroom. And I think that was probably one of the best things that happened in the trial, was that no cameras were allowed, so we can, to some degree, keep some control inside the courtroom. If the cameras are in there, you lose control, and because as soon as we stepped out of the courtroom, all the cameras and everything, you lose control of everything. It's now a different spin, a different way of the media is always interested in something that I'm not interested
and
in.
has absolutely nothing to do with the trial.
Most
And
of the time.
after trying hundreds of cases, that no matter what, jurors are going to watch some sort of media
Yes.
or news, and they're told not to, but you can't escape it.
That's right.
You know?
Especially in a trial like this, because it's everywhere. It's on TV, it's on the radio, it's on the newspaper. Even if you're trying your best, you're walking down the street and there's a newspaper that says, "Witness says so and so," and you can't help but look at it, and you can't help but watch TV. And this trial is without a doubt the most highly publicized case in the history of the state. Now people argue and say no. There's other things, that the case in what was it, in Houston, in Dallas, that involved Cullen Davis.
Yeah, but nobody remembers it like
Go
Selena.
to, what I say is go to Mexico and ask them, do you remember the Cullen Davis case? They'll say, who? Go to Japan Go to Japan and say, do you remember the Colin Davis case? They'll say, who? Go to England. Go to France. These are all some of the countries that have come to Corpus Christi to interview me on the Selena murder case. Go to any of these countries and tell them, do you remember the Selena murder case? Oh, yes.
So there's a multicultural media also. There's a worldwide phenomenon going on. I was in law school in the late 90s, and I was in the Mediterranean. They had just shot Gladiator with Russell Crowe. And
Wow.
part of it, so I did one of my exchange was I spent a summer in Malta. I didn't even know where Malta was. It was like, 90 miles from Sicily and right there by Africa. And they told me, where are you from? And I said, Corpus Christi. And the Maltese people said, Selena. That's how, Maltese people in the middle of the Mediterranean in Valletta said, Selena, yes. And Jennifer Lopez.
Yep.
I don't think Jennifer Lopez would have been the mega superstar she was if she hadn't become, had done that part.
Yes.
So, God rest her soul, and the Selena Fest and everything else that goes on, that gives credence to this, was probably the most important still. And
23 years later.
23 years later.
And still, when I was trying the case, I thought to myself, 5 years from now, all this is going to be over. People are just going to forget. It's 23 years later, and people are just as interested now, and maybe even more than they were back then. It's amazing to me. And I think it's just, it's owing to one particular individual. It's Selena. Selena had whatever it is. I don't know what it is. It's God-given. It's not learned. It's not taught. It's not something that you pick up. It comes when you're born. It comes with you. It's God-given. And whatever it is, she had it. She had this gift. And I remember seeing her in concert and telling my wife, look at this girl. What was amazing to me was that the people who were watching her perform were not limited to a certain part of the population, not teenagers. You had little children from 2 years old all the way to viejitos and viejitas in their 80s, all dancing to Bidi Bidi Bam Bam, and all just hypnotized by this, the beauty of this girl, by the talent of this girl, the charisma. It's like a magnetism. She had it. And one of the biggest tragedies here in Corpus Christi was the death of Selena. She and at death so young. It was very, very tragic.
Yeah, I remember I was working at the hospital when she came in. I worked in ICU, and they brought her into the ER, and probably we're a couple of years apart in age. At the time, she was very young.
She was 23.
23, yeah. And I was in grad school at the time, and I was working night shift. And we had heard about it in the late afternoon, and then I believe Carlos Lopez from the radio had nonstop broadcast, what was going on, and a lot of people ask, why Days In? My wife said, are you going to be interviewing Mr. Valdez? And I said, she said, does he know why? And a lot of people Days In's a very humble hotel. Not to say anything disparaging about it. It's just you save some money when you stay at Days Inn. Why did she meet her at Days Inn? If you know.
Oh yeah, there's everything that you ever want to know about the case is in the book, and it would take me probably 2 hours to be able to detail everything that's in this book.
And I think a lot of people need to know the story.
Just briefly.
I mean, this book you wrote. When did you finish the book?
This book I wrote in 2005, and let me tell you, Joe, I wrote every single word of this book. People say, no, somebody wrote it for me, a ghostwriter. I have the action, because I hand wrote it.
Oh, wow.
I didn't use a computer. I'm very old school. Very old school.
I am still old school. I mean, you learn better when you write stuff down.
When I write my briefs for cases, I handwrite them and give them to my secretary, and she types them up.
I learned from the best like
I
you.
have about
this book right here.
700 handwritten pages at my house in the garage. I have it in there.
You better scan them. You better don't lose that stuff.
Yeah,
I want
that's
you
true.
to scan. I need for you to scan this stuff. Okay.
So it's
Yeah.
and let me tell you real briefly what happened on Thursday, the 30th of March, 1995. Yolanda Saldivar had come back into Corpus Christi and checked into the Days Inn, wanting to meet with Selena on Thursday. And the reason she checked into the Days Inn was the closest hotel that.
She didn't live here in Corpus?
No, she lived in San Antonio.
Oh.
She lived in San Antonio. She was in Monterrey working for Selena. When Selena called her and said, Yolanda, I'm going to go to the police because you don't want to bring me those documents that I need. I need those documents. I need those documents.
And what were those documents?
Mostly financial documents. April 15th was coming up. Selena's accountant was working on her IRS file, on her filing,
Yeah.
income tax filing, and needed the documents that only one single person had. Yolanda Saldivar controlled all the finances for Selena. Yolanda had those documents, and that's how she kept Selena from firing her. So Yolanda went from Monterey to San Antonio for one reason, to pick up the gun. She picked up the gun, drove to Corpus Christi on Thursday, March the 30th, checked into the Days Inn, called Selena, and told her, I have the documents. If you want to come by, I have the documents. Selena went that night to the Days Inn. She didn't go by herself. She went with her husband, Chris Perez. Chris waited outside while Selena went inside, and Yolanda was not very happy that Chris was there waiting. So she gave her some documents. Selena left with Chris that evening. On the way home, she discovered that those weren't the documents that she was looking for. So the next day was the 31st of March, 1995. It was a Friday. It was raining a little bit. And that's the day that Yolanda was able to lure Selena back to the
Oh my gosh.
hotel. And that's where it
And
ended.
she went along that time.
She went alone. I need about 2 hours to be able to tell the whole story from start. And what's funny is people don't know the story. The only thing they know is what they've heard on Gordo y la Flaca, El Primer Impacto. That's not the story. That's not the story. The real story is even more interesting, but it takes some time to be able to tell you exactly what happened and why it happened.
But we're gonna
And
have
I'll
you
tell you
back
one
on,
thing,
you know.
everything's in the book. Everything's
Yeah.
in there.
And we encourage people to look at this and to order this, and can I get it on Amazon?
You can get it on Amazon.
There
yes.
you go. And
You
that's
can-
where I get all my
Yes.
stuff down. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Justice for Selena by Carlos Valdez, and I think that the book is. And thank you for beforehand for signing this for me. I'm going to hold on to this and cherish it very much.
Joe, and just for your viewers, that is a picture of me coming out of the courtroom.
Look at this young man.
That is not my
Right,
son.
right,
It is
yeah.
me coming out of the courtroom.
You age well. You
Yeah.
age well. You know, and just you know, we're kind of winding down here, and we want to bring you on in, for this specific topic alone. I'd like to do just a total another hour at least, but let's talk a little bit about politics. You know,
Yes.
going through something like that probably changed you as a lawyer forever,
Yes,
a
sir.
district attorney forever.
That is very good. Very good. Nobody's ever asked me that or talked to me about that, but it's true. Going through an experience like this, it changes you. It changes everybody. It changes everybody. And I've become closer to the people that I went through with it, that I went through this whole ordeal with. I become closer to them. It does change you. It makes you look at things differently. It makes you to try to look at things from different perspectives. Because you know, no matter what you do or how you do it, you've got to always try to do what is right. And what is right is not always easy to discern. It's not always easy to discover. You have to look at it from many different angles. That's what the problem. One of the problems we have in this country is we have people on both sides saying, I'm right, without wanting to, let me see how you're right. That's what's important to me. Show me how you are right so that I can understand where you're coming from.
Where is Newt Gingrich and Ted Kennedy when we need them?
Yeah, yep. And there's always grounds where we can find, we may not agree completely, but we can move forward. And this country is what it is to this day because of that, because of the compromise, because of the being able to talk to each other. Now, all we're doing is talking at each other and angry, and everybody's angry. And
we got
going
Fox
through this
on one
case,
side and we got MSNBC on the other.
yeah. And going through this case made me understand that you got to look at life through many different perspectives in order to be able to get things done. And I'll tell you, one of the most difficult things I had, the pressure came from our own people, from Hispanics, telling me, you don't have what it takes to prosecute something like this. You should get a better prosecutor. You're never going to win. Never going. This case will.
And that's part of our culture.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
people will. I've you know how many times I've had someone go to a person of different color than me, and then when they're broke, they say, I should have come to you to defend me because you pick up the phone at 2 a.m. I went and paid this guy $100,000, and at 5 o'clock he's gone.
Yeah.
And then they come back to you later. People in our own culture, we both have that in common. We've had to live with that people in our own culture don't believe in our own culture. Right. That, you know, a lot of the time I'll say to myself, people come back to me and say, I didn't know what I had in you as an attorney. Right. When you picked up that phone at 10 at night, and I said, well, I'm going to go hire this guy who's an ex-district attorney in Houston, who is whiter than white, you know. I mean, in the dictionary for a lawyer, they show his picture, and then they say, you know, I should have stuck with you. And, you know, I had a lady who got 75 years the other day. Yep. 75 years. They buried her under the jail, and I had 5 years on the table. Yep. But she wanted to go with someone else and paid them a lot of money. And that's the same thing. It must have hurt when people say that, and, you know, your record stands for itself, all that you accomplished, and they said, get a better lawyer. Get somebody else. Get a white lawyer. You know, I mean, why would people? You're the district attorney. I mean, how did that make you feel?
And I had at least a couple of people tell me, you need to file a motion to recuse yourself. You need to get out of the case. Get somebody else to prosecute the case. And the way I look at things like that, whenever I'm criticized or whenever I'm praised, that's the same thing. Whenever I'm criticized, I look at the person doing the criticizing or the praising, because that says more about the person than it does about me.
That's right.
If it's somebody that I really admire, and that I think highly of, I will take that criticism very seriously and will try to change whatever it is that I need to change. If it's somebody that is just angry with me or just, then let it roll off your back. You need to let it roll off your back and go forward.
Well, and just very briefly, I mean, this interview's flown by, but it's important. You've served in the city capacity, county capacity, and the district attorney capacity, and now you're running for judge.
I'm running for judge for the 148th District Court.
Why?
Because for the same reason that I ran many, many years ago for county attorney, I still want to contribute to this community. Joe, I want to make this community a better community, make this a better county, make this a better state, make this a better country, and make this a better world. The only way I know how to do that is doing it myself. I can't expect other people or ask other people to do something that I won't do myself. So that's what I want to do, is continue to contribute. I have a lot of trial experience. People have forgotten the cases that I've tried personally, myself. The court that I'm running for is a trial court. And I not only have criminal trials that I've tried, criminal cases, civil cases. The biggest civil cases involving governmental entities in Nueces County, I've tried myself personally. So I've got all this trial experience, And what I tell people is, want to use this experience. I want to use it to on the bench to serve people, and that's the only reason I'm running. And I tell people, trial experience for a trial court. That's it. It's that simple. I had this experience. There's not going to be any case that comes before me as a judge that I haven't already experienced, that I probably tried, that I've already heard of. I may get a surprise every once in a while, but that's going to be very rare.
Well, something like the tremendous pressure you went through, the Chinese have a saying, true gold fears no fire. And I believe that's true 5,000 years ago. I believe it's true today that you went through that fire with this trial. And that it's not your defining moment. The defining moments are the moments when you decide, I'm going to be a lawyer.
That's right.
So my mother won't get hurt.
Beautiful. That is exactly right.
Those are the defining moments. The defining moments, people say, well, the defining moment is when you prosecuted this case that made worldwide attention. But I think the real defining moment is when you went off to school and your parents didn't know how you made it. And you did it all by yourself. Well, with a lot of people helping.
I think my character is not formed, and a person's character is not formed by everybody says, what's the most important case that you've ever tried? Well, the most highly publicized case is the Selena murder case. But that doesn't define my character. My character is defined by the things I do when I think nobody's watching. When I think that nobody sees what I do at those moments is what defines my character.
That's right. That's right. And you watching Carlos Valdez, we have run out of time, but I want you to get involved and get out there and vote. That's what we need more of, is people getting out there, especially in this election. When it's not the president running, a lot of Hispanics don't get out there and vote. I know that from experience, but you have to vote. This is one of the most important elections for your congressman, for your judges. If you don't think that who your district attorney is, if you don't think who your judge is doesn't matter, it does matter. How can we get a hold of you if we want to help with your campaign? If people want to help with your campaign, what's the best number to call?
The best number to call is 361-882-1612. 361-882-1612.
882-1612 is the golden number, 882-1612. 12. And also Facebook, Twitter, and all that?
Not yet, but
it's coming.
It's coming.
Any emails they can shoot you?
Oh yeah, they can. My email address is carlosv7843@gmail.com.
And we'll get that down.
carlosv7843@gmail.com, and I'll be glad to respond. And I've responded. What's interesting is people will read the book and send me an email asking questions about the book.
And that's carlosv7843 at Gmail?
At gmail.com.
Okay, and then it's 882-1612.
Very good.
All right. Well, we've had the author of the book and one of the trials in American history in the world that been here. It's been a pleasure. We want to bring you on again. And as your campaign progresses, we want you back on. I've been honored to have you on. Not only that, but you're one of the role models that made me go to law school.
Thank you, Joe.
I appreciate
it. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. And we're going to have another special guest on here when we come back, and you're going to be very surprised by him. I'm going to tell you. And it's art that makes the world go round, not just the law. So this is Joe Flores signing off. Thank you all, and God bless.